Aidan Curran, thank you so much for joining me on Flop Culture. How are you?
I'm fine, thanks.
I am so excited to have you. I'm obsessed with Irish number ones, and we'll be talking about that a little bit later on. But before we get into all that, what flop did you pick this week?
The flop I've picked is Get On Your Boots by U2.
Great choice. Did go to number one here.
It did.
Didn't go to number one a lot of other places. Are you a U2 fan, first of all?
No, I'm not. I'm not a U2 fan. I'm not a U2 begrudger either. So
Okay.
I'm somewhere in the middle of the spectrum.
I would also say I'm the same. And I remember being very immersed in when this was coming out, because, you know, they were coming off the back of like their largest gap between albums. There seemed to be a lot of anticipation for the song. Radio was very much pushing the song and the album, being like, oh my God, they're back, whatever. And at the time, I remember thinking, I kind of like this song. I was like, this is kind of fun. I kind of wasn't expecting this from them. And even listening to it again for this podcast, I was like, I get why people don't like it, but I was like, this kind of works for me.
I know, I have to agree. I was surprised when I went back to listen to it, because it has this reputation, and there are like U2 fan forums and message boards having big discussions about, is Get On Your Boots a terrible song? No, I love it. No, I hate it. And I went back, and it starts off really funky and fresh and fun, and you kind of go, yeah, this is not bad. It's kind of getting into it.
Yeah.
Then, of course, it gets into the main song itself.
The chorus is where it loses it for me. It's Bono going, you don't know. No, I hate it. Immediately, I'm like, I hate this now, turn it off.
Well, I have to say, when Bono comes in, first of all, is where it starts to lose it, because he does this type of, it's not really a verse or a song or a tune. It's this kind of na 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 na. And it was like he's obviously flying between summits and global poverty awareness functions, writing things down in the back of an envelope so he can meet the lads and put something over a track. And there was a lot of snark at the time. There was an Elvis Costello song called Pump It Up, which is very similar to, and Bob Dylan's Subterranean Homesick Blues. And they were just saying, like, there's no thought put into this. This is the lead single of a huge U2 product, which is a multi-million-dollar organization, and they're going to have this over the radio, over media, and the best they can come up with is get on your boots, sexy boots.
I didn't realise that thematically the song is about Bono taking his family on vacation to France and witnessing warplanes flying overhead at the start of the Iraq War. Sorry?
Yeah,
pardon?
right.
What?
I'm sure they spent hours afterwards coming up with, what's this about again? Yeah. Oh yeah, there goes another sexy boot towards Iraq. In my house, we called planes sexy boots.
It's just like the loosest, I don't know, and the whole idea of like it's a women should be in charge. I don't know. It was just, I think there was, and I think they've talked about this since. Sorry, we should say this is like their first song, as I said. I think it was a 5-year break between albums, and like there was loads of issues even with the release of this song going out too early or whatever.
Yeah, this was the one where someone walking on the beach outside Bono's house apparently overheard it, and this was a huge controversy at the time. Wow, the U2 song has leaked. Grand.
So it was like they had this big 5-year gap between albums, and they were working with people like Rick Rubin in the middle, and they had these mad like experimental sessions apparently, and they ended up scrapping a load of the stuff with Rick Rubin because Rick is very like back to basics. I need you to just pull back and like just go strip it right back, and that's not really how they work at all. So all of that material is somewhere out in the ether. They started working then with Brian Eno on what ended up becoming No Line on the Horizon and this song, which obviously features on this album. And again, in press and stuff, they were being like, this is so experimental. We are like back to experimenting again. This is all going to be really weird and funky and cool, and it's not going to be what you expect.
I've just dislocated an eyeball from rolling it. 'Cause I think they say that before every album, like, this is the new U2 that you haven't heard before, and it's going to be so funky and experimental. And the album itself is just plodding mid-tempo. It's generic AI U2, really.
The album is so U2, but specifically this song, I would say is probably the most is interesting the right word? It probably is the most experimental and kind of weird, because it seems so out of step with the other music. But even then, one of the members of U2 came out then after and said that one of the reasons why Getting Your Boots flopped was that there were just too many ideas going on at once, and it was one of the only songs where they didn't walk back the experimentation.
It was too good for Fionnuala. That's why it was flopped. we just weren't sophisticated enough to deal with all these ideas. I think what happened was they felt the rest of the album is kind of very vague and experimental for U2, that is. So they needed something that was a bit more poppier, radio friendly and punchier. So they said, well, we did Vertigo and we did Beautiful Day, so why don't we photocopy of Vertigo and try and make that sound a little bit funkier, and that'll do. That'll, job done. This thing writes itself. We just put out an upbeat, funky song and everyone will love it. We're U2. We can't fail. We're too big to fail.
Too big to fail. Yeah, because they were coming out of this kind of imperial phase, kind of, would you call it?
Definitely. I'd say at the start of the noughties, they're as massive as they ever were. I mean, if you think of the album they had at about 2004, 2005, they actually had 2 number 1 singles in the UK, which is, for them, kind of, the UK was always a bit of a cold toast towards U2. They didn't really have that many number 1s there. So they were huge. They were having chart hits, top 10 hits. And then this thing comes out and, not to spoil it for people, but it doesn't even get into the top 10 in the UK. And they've never had a top 30 single since.
Yeah, this really started like the streak for them. So as you mentioned, the release of it was kind of fucked from the beginning. So as you said, there was this fan outside one of the sessions where they were recording and recorded this song in particular. I had it up on YouTube. And then it was also supposed to, this is so of a time, it was supposed to get like its Irish radio premiere on the Colm and Jim Breakfast Show back in the day at 8:10 on the 19th of January 2009. Dave Fanning, obviously big friend of U2, was supposed to premiere it. But then again, there was like a 30-second sample leaked to the internet. So then the label was just like, get it on iTunes. We need it on iTunes now. Just let it. So then even when it was premiered on Irish radio, a lot of people had already heard it. I feel like that was just a sign of what was to come for how messy this rollout was in a way. And
I see you see, it wouldn't have been a problem if the song had been good, if the song had been strong enough and it had like really robust verse, of course. Because even if you're not a huge U2 fan, the one thing they always have are these big skyscraping, memorable choruses that people can chant along to. Like I listen again to Get On Your Boots, and I'm halfway through it and go, did I pass the chorus? Do I have to go back? Do I have to turn back and do a Yui? And it's just so un-U2 in that sense. There's no big moment. Like ostensibly, this is something that the folks in the Enormo Dome in Idaho have to sing along to at the back. And I saw them on that tour as well.
Okay, and what was it like live? Because you've Adam Clayton saying in other interviews that like it like, Get On Your Boots pops off live. I don't really know where the disconnect was.
No, I think the only thing popping off live the night I saw them were people going to the bar. Honestly, for the new stuff, people just turned around and said, we'll go to the bar.
Yeah.
It was in the Stade de France in Paris, and I happened to be standing next to a lot of English guys, for example, and they all do, all right, we're going to go to the bar now, it's a new one. And it was kind of like the atmosphere just fell flat for the new songs. They had a kind of funky house remix of a song called I'll Go Crazy If I Don't Go Crazy Tonight.
Yes, also on this album,
their final top 10 hit in Ireland. They haven't had a top 10 hit in Ireland since 2009. That's how badly it stunk out their careers for them.
Yeah.
So, and that went down well. But otherwise, it was the start of U2 as a heritage act on that tour. It was the tour where they had the big claw.
Yes.
So the story was the big claw, and musically it was just the greatest hits and a few of the new songs thrown in. I mean, I think they could see it coming. It wasn't sticking the landing.
Because this was the thing, this was the first album, or maybe not the first, but like a majority album where Bono was not trying to write from the first person perspective and he was trying to take other people's perspective. But it's interesting though, you have like the second single as well, like Magnificent is so much more U2 core. Generally the fans really like it. I think it's a good song.
So do I. I can see why they wouldn't want to release something that's so blatantly U2.
Yeah.
But it would have been a smash hit and people would have hated U2 anyway, or
Yeah.
loved U2. So they might as well just be damned if they do and say, right, we're U2, we'll put up whatever we want. This is the most U2 song we have. And it's this big skyscraping chorus with jangly chords. It's classic U2. I mean, they would probably have got another album cycle or two out of it on the momentum of, leaning into their classic sound. Yeah. I mean, I'm all for bands experimenting, but they have to be able to do it and pull it off. And Get On Your Boots is just the sound of a band who felt they had to do something different, but didn't have the actual substance of a song to shore it up.
Yeah, it was almost chosen as the song to open the album. It was between that, Fez Being Born, and No Line on the Horizon. No Line on the Horizon was eventually chosen. I have some reviews here for you if you'd like to hear them, and I'll see if you agree with them. So Blender said, Get On Your Boots is a manic low-end rocker a la Vertigo with phased 70s style synths, buzzing guitar and a breathless vocal from Bono that brings back fond memories of the days when The Edge tried to rap. That's one of the more positive ones, I will say. All Music said, contrary to the suggestion of the clanking, sputtering first single, Get On Your Boots, its riffs and Pump Up the Jam chant sounding like a cheap mashup stitched together in GarageBand, No Line on the Horizon isn't a garish, gaudy electro dalliance in the vein of pop. And then we have someone from Rolling Stone, Brian Hyatt, called the song energetic but cluttered, which I think I would agree with there.
Yeah, cluttered. It's just bits thrown together to try and make a song. Like I said, if you were to try and get your acoustic guitar or piano and play Get On Your Boots, like you'd be just going dun 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 dun. Hey, sexy boots. Dun, dun, dun. I think nobody mentioned at the time that like middle-aged being a chorus of a song. Hey, sexy boots. It's a bit ick.
Yeah, because at this point they're in middle age at this point, and it is just a bit. I don't know. It's the video and everything. They're in this weird kind of amusement park terror thing. The backdrop. It is a bit.
Yeah, this is a band who in Rattle and Hum, where they were trying to make jokes, were failing miserably.
Yeah.
So they're not going to be able to pull off fun.
No,
Parks. It's not in their wheelhouse at all. So they probably thought, yeah, we can do this. Again, it comes back to you're a big organisation. Do you have anyone there who says no? Do you have anyone there who says, well, maybe not, push it this way? I mean, afterwards, there was a bit of whispers about, Brian Eno was unhappy. He wasn't getting credits, and Daniel and that they'd put in a lot of ideas as well. So I think there was a lot of, how do we do this? We're not sure. They didn't have the songs really. And traditionally, that's how U2 do work. They don't have anything going into the studio and they come up with songs, but they generally come up with songs with strong melodies.
Yes.
And Get On Your Boots, it just sounds a bit of a raw mash, to be honest.
Yeah, that's very true. I mentioned Adam Clayton. He's talked about it before in an interview with Rolling Stones about popping off live. He said, interestingly, it's going off live. I think probably what happened was it's a common U2 problem. I think we probably worked on it and worked on it and worked on it. And instead of executing one idea well, I think we had probably 5 ideas in the song and it just confused people. They weren't sure what they were hearing. Larry Mullen Jr. said similar. He said it was as choosing it as the lead single was a catastrophic choice and that it was beginning of the end. We never recovered from it, kind of talking about like it's funny because, and obviously flop culture is all about talking about things that can be interpreted as failures, whatever way that interpretation is. And like Get On Your Boots is a failure in certain ways, but as you said, it still went to number 1 in Ireland. The album still did fucking unbelievably well, went to number 1 in the States, sold really, really well, but by previous standards was a failure. And they've been very open talking about the fact that it was like extremely disappointing how, quote unquote, badly it did, when actually it kind of like, again, and even by today's standards, it's an absolute home run, like smash for them.
Oh yeah, I suppose the fact that they were so huge means there was always going to be some sort of momentum that the next album would always sell a lot anyway, and it would be the one after that when people get home and see what they've bought and they see, oh, it's No Line on the Horizon. I didn't realise I was buying middle-aged men droning for 45 minutes, which if you have anyone listening who hasn't listened to the rest of the album, Get On Your Boots, as you said, is very atypical of the album.
It's a total red herring. Like, and I listen to the album and I'm like, pretty good, with the exception of I was also on discussions and Reddit forums and stuff. It's the U2 Reddit is a very funny place to be because it's just U2 fans arguing with each other about things, which is probably every Reddit forum about a band or an artist. But anyway, and there was one about because I was just interested, like from a fan perspective, I was like, do people hate Get On Your Boots? Did they hate it at the time? Do they hate it now? And there's one about like what is the worst U2 song, and you do have people suggesting Get On Your Boots, but you have other people suggesting Breathe, which is from this album as well. And I think Breathe is fucking worse. Breathe sounds fucking awful. I hate Breathe.
I actually like Breathe. I was. If I had to pick the two songs, we're having a real disagreement over U2.
Oh, okay.
This is like a U2 Reddit forum. I would say if there are two songs I liked in the album, it was Magnificent and Breathe.
Okay.
I just found Breathe a little poppier, a little less of the drudgery, but maybe it's because it's surrounded by the droning 7-minute tracks where they're just going round in circles, and you can literally hear Bono turning the pages of his lyric book because he hasn't worked on the melodies. He's just reading out whatever words he has that kind of go with the tune, and they haven't. This thing about we worked in it too much makes me laugh because they haven't worked in it at all. It's like you have these bands who do jam sessions, then the singer comes back with the lyrics and they try and put the two together. But here it sounds like they're poles apart. The lyrics are just kind of superimposed onto the songs and squashed in, and they're very kind of self-consciously poetic. You mentioned that it was where he wasn't singing about himself in the first person, but it comes across as a bit try hard in that sense. He's singing about being a journalist in Lebanon. Some of it's a bit gauche about giving kids oranges out of the tank and things like that.
Yeah, that's another thing that'll give you the ick, honestly. Did you like stand-up comedy? Because stand-up comedy came up in the conversation about worst U2 songs, and I liked it.
I liked it as well. I thought it had an idea and it kind of executed it and had a bit of structure, and I could see it as I suppose I'm thinking of are the two albums before that from U2 where they do these really tight little songs where they went to number one and they went to the charts because they were good pop songs. And the U2 of the 80s was these big stadium-filling power ballads. But in the noughties, for those two albums, they were kind of really tight, radio-friendly, catchy tunes. You could sing along to them. And that got lost on No Line on the Horizon. And they tried to do that with Get On Your Boots, that they tried to have that type of a song. And they just didn't have the song there. So stand-up comedy is one of those songs where I think they have a song in amongst all of the droning.
Yeah. We talked about some of the chart successes or failures. Entered the Billboard Hot 100 Top 40 in its debut week. I think it entered at 37, became their final Top 40 single there. So this kind of was the beginning and the end in so many ways. You mentioned the UK, reached number 12. The band's 40th UK Top 40 single and their 39th single to enter the UK Top 20. But it did not perform well. So I think it dropped to number 20 in its second week, then to number 30 before leaving the chart. It was only in the top 100 for 5 weeks. It went number one in Scotland and Ireland, which is just very funny.
You see, that's one in the eye for all the people who say Irish people are begrudgers and so cool about YouTube. Well, we put Get On Your Boots, their worst song, to number one. I mean, that is an act of love towards U2.
Truly, we're so supportive of our own. So where do they go from here? Because in my head, I think people would say the next album, Songs of Innocence, and the whole mess with the iPhones, I think people would mark that as like the beginning of their flop era. But I do kind of think it's this, and I think it was just that this coupled with the iPhone stuff, which in fairness was that kind of their fault. Well, actually, it was because they signed up to the deal. But this is the beginning of the end for them.
It is, and like I said, it's sold so well because they still had the wind in their sails of being the biggest band in the world. But the mid-noughties is where everything starts to go wrong for U2. I mean, they always had snark and people always dumped on Bono, but you have to remember there's the tax issue as well in 2006, 2007, where, and I'm going to choose my words carefully, and everything they did was legal.
Yeah.
But they moved their tax business arrangements from Ireland to the Netherlands to have more advantageous tax arrangements for their company, while at the same time Bono was campaigning for drop the debt, all these things. So people were going, really, it was getting on people's nerves.
Yeah.
And also in an Irish sense, U2 personally had done very well from staying in Ireland when there was a tax exemption for artists in Ireland. So the idea of them suddenly moving some of their business arrangements to the Netherlands to profit there rubbed people up. And that was the start of the loss of their dominance, their supremacy. You know, from here on in, they're schlepping around to BBC chat shows to perform their songs, whereas before, you know, they'd be beaming in from Las Vegas or something like that, or they wouldn't be on Top of the Pops or things like that.
Yeah.
So you can see the crack starting there. No Line on the Horizon is actually the last album with Paul McGuinness as their manager.
Ah, okay, interesting. I meant to ask you that. I wasn't sure.
Yeah, so would he have signed off on the deal to put their 2014 album Free on everybody's iPad and iPhone? Probably not, because it, you know, for anyone who doesn't remember it, people woke up one morning and found they had the new U2 album Free on their device. And where normally you'd say, oh God, free album, great. This just totally came across as condescending. We're going to give our album for free to the little people. It was also a bit defensive because, as you said, they probably knew that it was in the air that they were entering their flop era.
Yeah.
And how do we pull off something which will circumvent the idea of us having terrible sales? We'll give it away for free.
We'll give it away for free and take a big upfront sum that nobody will know about because we gave it away for free.
We gave it away for free, and this will look revolutionary. It'll look like us being generous. And of course, people hated this.
Yeah.
It just came across so badly, and you know, they realised it straight away as well. I mean, like, even I suppose weeks later, they were realising what a monumental mistake it was to do that. And of course, U2 fans then, who we've established love being on Reddit arguing about these things,
Truly, yeah.
are going, well, it was a great act of benevolence to give away such fantastic music, versus, well, they're devaluing U2's music by giving it away for free. All that sort of stuff. So anyway, none of that. All of that was the context around the flop era. So you could see how their air of dominance and superiority rode away and be chipped away at. And the fact that they'd no songs left just made that worse.
You're like, oh, they are done. They have done all the songs.
You see, they could have weathered a lot of that. They could have weathered the tax stuff if they had 10 great songs on the next song. They could have weathered the iPhone stuff. It was
people have recovered from worse. You know what I mean? People would be, and even and again, as you said, obviously the begrudgers will begrudge, the ones that want to, but and plenty of other people have moved on, and will, like, it won't even enter their head. A U2 song comes on the radio, the Bono, the tax thing doesn't even enter their head. You know what I mean? They're like, oh, banger, whatever. But people have recovered from way worse. So just give us the tunes, right? Well, I think the frustrating and one thing that came across from fans about Get On Your Boots was that it's just, and you've mentioned it, like, it's not written, Bono is written better than this lyrically, and it crops up on other songs in the album as well, but like, it's just not very strong. The lyrics aren't what I like about it. I think it sounds interesting and then it kind of loses the run of itself. The lyrics, if you look into them in any kind of strong way, I'll bring them up there in a second, it's just a bit like,
you just don't like it when Bono starts writing about planes flying over his mansion in south of France. Is that it?
Oh, it's just, I don't know. Hang on, let me
Well,
bring
I
up
do
these
have to
lyrics.
laugh about how a song called Get On Your Boots, Hey Sexy Boots is actually about the war, you know?
The future needs a big kiss, winds blow with a twist, never seen a moon like this, can you see it too? Night is falling everywhere, rockets at the fun fair, Satan loves a bomb scare, he won't scare you. And then we get into the aforementioned, hey, sexy boots, get on your boots, yeah. Candy floss ice cream, free me from a dark dream. Oh my God.
It is so tossed off. It really is. I mean, the one, you know, like I said, even if you are a U2 agnostic, like, the lyrics used to be a lot smarter and wittier.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying. And it seems like it was just, this was and you go back to the point of them saying, or Larry Mullen Jr. being like, we just worked on it too much. Did you? Or was this... Maybe you did musically, but lyrically, this reads like a first draft.
It does, yeah. It's something that isn't worked on at all. Even musically, I mean, the opening song, No Line on the Horizon, you've got the guitar sound from The Fly is in there as well. You've got the classic edge, jangly chords as well. I think Adam and Larry do a bit of more inventing. I think Adam doesn't get enough credit for actually trying to put in the odd funky bass line sometimes. I mean, no one would say they're virtuoso musicians, really. Like, they just do U2. And I suppose one of the problems with U2 being inventive is that the only thing they can do well is being U2.
Yeah.
like, that's what people love. They love the U2-ness of U2, and everyone is outside their comfort zone when U2 try to do something different. Sometimes it works. Like, I like the Zeropa stuff, for example.
Okay.
But that's because they had guiding hands like Brian Eno and Flood who are into this type of stuff, pushing them along, and they knew how to collaborate with people. But here, I think they didn't have the song. It comes back to the songs. Like, they just didn't have the songs.
Yeah. Poor U2.
Poor U2.
Can they ever? Do you think they'll ever have kind of I suppose, a mainstream comeback in this way, and in terms of even, I suppose, chart success, or are we done?
Not with original material. I mean,
Okay.
it's been, 14, 15 years since they've had a chart hit. It would be amazing if they did. I mean, nowadays we see songs coming back into the charts after 20 years because they've been on a movie or someone passes away or something like that. So those are the circumstances where U2 will have a chart hit single again. But, even in Ireland, they're not even getting songs into the top 50 in Ireland. I mean, that's just unheard of.
Yeah.
Even 10, 15 years ago. And now, I think as well, there's a broader point of rock music may have had its day and may be becoming like jazz or music hall or something like this, that it ate itself and it consumed itself, that there, grunge and Britpop became kind of these self-informing loops of retro nostalgia, guitar-sounding music, that by the noughties you had landfill indie where everything sounded tired and the same and pale, and it was just these white guys strumming the same chords. So there was that factor as well, that by the end of the noughties, when U2 brought out this album, people were a bit fed up with rock music. And, today you do have new rock bands like Maneskin are probably the biggest new rock band of the last few years, who came through the Eurovision route, funnily enough. So rock music is low in the stock exchange at the moment, and it would take something really new and different for it to come back in general. So U2's fan base at the moment is dad rock and Italians.
Dads who can afford to go to Vegas.
Yeah.
Are U2 the Irish artist with the most number ones in Ireland? Is that true?
That is true. They've had 21 number one singles.
Fucking hell.
And it breaks down very nicely. 7 in the 80s, 7 in the 90s, 7 in the noughties.
That's gorgeous.
It's a gorgeous stat, isn't it? And the 7 in the noughties tells you how big they were in the noughties. Like, all through the noughties as well.
Okay, so if Get On Your Boots was their worst number one, what's their best number one in your opinion?
Oh, I don't want to be a hipster, but their very first number one single was the title.
You're such a hipster.
I'm such
Here
a
he
hipster. Here he is. The Unforgettable Fire from the album of the same name in the mid-80s. It's completely un-U2. We were talking about U2 not sounding like U2, and this was the first album where they had Brian Eno and Daniel Lanois. So it's this kind of 80s synth moody thing. It doesn't have these big jangling chords. It doesn't have the traditional kind of verse, chorus, verse. It kind of shifts along. So it's this really shape-shifting, dark, moody type of thing, which I think holds up really well because it doesn't sound like U2 and because it's of its time, but a lot of the 80s dark synth pop sounds really good as well, and it has aged really well. So I would go with that, actually. I'm such a hipster.
You are such a hipster. I'll link it in the show notes for anyone who's unfamiliar. On the subject of number ones, talk to me about Irish number ones and tell listeners about it. It's a project that I'm absolutely obsessed with, as someone who, again, anyone who's followed me for a long time knows that I used to be obsessed with a YouTube user called Billboard Goddess, who used to put up the Billboard charts once a week, and I used to be gripped seeing if The Wanted would make it to number one with Glad You Came. Irish number one's a similar vein. Talk to me about how that all started and why you wanted to chart Irish number ones.
Yeah, because I'm a chart pop fan as well. So the idea is I listen to every song that went to number one in Ireland in order, and I listen to it, I write about my experiences. It may be traumatic, it may be happy, and whatever comes into my head, and then I give it a score out of 10.
Okay.
And it's been eye-opening. You go back and you listen to something you haven't listened to in 20 years, like Get On Your Boots. You listen to songs from the noughties and you realise just what a toxic decade the noughties was in terms of pop culture and things like that. You listen to, I suppose the most popular things on the site are the local parochial Irish things like Ain Fuckalella and Jumbo Breakfast Roll. I get huge amounts of traffic. Sometimes I have to check RIP.ie just to make sure Richie Cavan hasn't died.
Oh my God.
I'm sure there's somebody actually writing a PhD thesis about it, because from January this year, I'm just getting huge volumes of traffic to it. And again, it's things like that. People are they have kind of an appalled fascination sometimes with the bad stuff.
Yeah.
Which I do as well. I mean, Westlife had 13, 14 Irish number one, so I had to listen to each one of those. And
Okay, brilliant. Not really seeing the issue until maybe the later years. I think that's when things go off the rails for them.
That's an opinion.
Okay. That's certainly an opinion. Well, I suppose it's interesting when you think back to, like, look, novelty hits aren't unique to Ireland, but our brand of novelty hits are just, and again, you bring it back to this era of, like, people having to physically buy singles or, like, physically download a song and, like, pay money to own a song. It's just such a different time that it was like, oh, people actually went out and bought Ain Focalella. Sorry, I feel like Richie Kavanagh's getting in the neck. Jumbo Breakfast Roll, any of the Dustin ones, you know what I mean? It's...
Yeah, there was a kind of a commitment to make where you had to get out of the house and go down to the shop, to go onto Golden Discs and buy a physical artifact. You know, the charts today are still valid because streaming is a good reflection of what people are listening to as well, and there is a transaction there too. What's fascinating about the number ones is what that tells you, that why did so many people go out to buy Ain Focalella, put the number one for 9 weeks. At the same time, there was
9 weeks? What the hell? That's crazy. A quick correction here from Aidan. Fair play. He sent me this straight after we recorded. Ain Focalella was actually number one for 7 weeks, not 9.
And at the same time, there was another version of Ain Focalella in the top 10 by another band. And you see these things and you go, what is going on in Ireland, in the country?
Societally, psychologically, what kind of mood is it capturing? So I've ended up becoming the sociologist or psychologist to the nation, trying to figure out what is going on here. I mean, like Jumbo Breakfast Roll, which was number one during the Celtic Tiger, is a bit more understandable because it's a comedy skit about the Celtic Tiger building and the guy going to Statoil, as it were, to get the Jumbo Breakfast Roll. So there's some things you can look back on and say, oh, sure, that was that. What a time. But then you see that there were number ones about the Pope visiting Ireland, for example, and you kind of go, really? Yeah.
Keeping things like Blondie off number one.
Crazy. Can we talk about Mr. Brightside Watch? That's something you track on your Instagram stories about the killer song, Mr. Brightside. An interesting fact, has never gotten to number one in Ireland, which I would have assumed it did.
It has never even got into the top 40 in
That's
Ireland.
Crazy,
it is nuts. I mean, I remember when I started doing this, just to give the backstory for this.
Yes, please.
On my socials, at Irish Number Ones, as well as going back over the old number ones, I also look at this week's new Irish charts, and which comes out on a Friday afternoon. So I post the number one, new number one. What else is new in the charts? And I generally tended to have a look and see what else was in the charts. And I happened to notice that Mr. Brightside was always in the charts. I kept looking, it was still in the charts, always in. So I posted about this, and the reaction was unbelievable. People couldn't believe, like, I was getting responses from DJs saying, oh yeah, I'm not surprised, like I have to play 3 times a night or in bars.
Yeah.
And people were coming to me and saying, yeah, I'm so sick of Mr. Brightside. They hear it everywhere. Nobody understands why this song seems to persist. It's, if you go out on a Saturday night, it's not just the background noise. It seems to be the foreground noise.
It is a banger. I'm a Killers apologist and a Mr. Brightside apologist, but it's just, but again, as you said, it's so, but because it's so prevalent, how has it not been in the top 10, to not be in the top 40? What's going on with us? What were we doing?
It almost went into the top 40 in January this year because it was in Saltburn. So it went.
Oh yes.
So it went back up to equal its highest ever place of number 42. So there was great tension on the Irish number one socials. Will it actually go into the top 40? And no, of course it fell away because it just does that to frustrate me. I suppose when it came out originally in the 2000s, about 2004, 20 years ago. That it was part of the wave of alternative American bands like The Strokes, Interpol, Kings of Leon. So it was seen as being alternative now, which is funny because it has the second life of being a bland, generic song that the lads sing.
Oh, it's a huge basic white girl anthem now, like, you know?
Yeah, basic is basically the word for it now.
So sorry, how many weeks has it been on the charts?
319 weeks in total. Okay. Has never been in the top 40 in Ireland.
Crazy.
It is great. It's something slightly similar in the UK where it's about 300 and something as well. It went as high as number 10 back in the day. But they have similar issues with Mr. Brightside in the UK. That's like the lads go on stag parties and they sing it. And DJs in bars know that if you drop Mr. Brightside, the takings in the bar will go up.
Yeah.
Because the lads, Basic is the word for it. And I suppose it's the incomprehension, like why this song? I mean, I have no strong feelings about it.
That minute that guitar intro starts, coming out of my cage, I've been doing just fine. Perfect.
You're
Brilliant.
you're shouting along to it in Coppers.
Yeah,
are you?
100%.
When
Maybe not Coppers, hell on earth, but some other equivalently basic establishment, to be honest.
We see there is a kind of a stereotype now around Mr. Brightside. Like the basic white girl anthem is one thing, but it's the Coppers anthem now that on All Ireland final weekend, all the lads go into Coppers with their blue jeans and brown Piscatcher shoes and county jerseys, and they're roaring along to Mr. Brightside. Marty Morrissey is in there. And Marty Morrissey goes up to you in Coppers Fionnuala and he says, "Hey, sexy boots."
And I say it's time to go home. Talk to me about if you'd pick like a bop and a flop of all time Irish number ones. We'll start with your bop. What's the best song that's ever gone number one in Ireland?
Well, my pick would be, and it's kind of a personal pick. I've picked "What Have I Done to Deserve This" by Pet Shop Boys and Dusty Springfield.
Okay.
And there is a slightly parochial angle to this because Dusty Springfield's mother is from Tralee, my hometown.
Shout
so
out.
she doesn't get as much recognition, I think, for being someone who's very proud of her Irish roots. I mean, when she was famous on TV in the 60s and in the UK, BBC reruns some of these shows, and she's always singing Irish songs. Like, this is the song my family sings, and Tom Jones is on with her, and Tom Jones is there saying, "Oh, you're Irish, Dusty, I'm Welsh," and all this sort of thing. So I think she's slightly forgotten as being someone who's an Irish diaspora star as well. Apart from it being a banging tune, there's also the sense of it being her big comeback because she had been forgotten. She had moved away from the UK because she was getting awful press coverage and sneery remarks about her sexuality, that she was in a same-sex relationship in the States. So her profile had slipped and she had personal problems as well. And the Pet Shop Boys felt that she was a star worth saving, really. So they approached her to do the song and she said no, and they kept at her, and eventually they did it. And it was just a huge success. And it's embodied in the song as well. It's this strong, strident song about sticking up for yourself and not taking any messing from whatever sad sack of a guy is giving you hassle as well. And like I said, banging tune. I have a soft spot anyway for 80s pop. So that would be my pick as my favourite number one.
Okay, and what about the flop, the ultimate worst, chronic? When you think about the fact that it went to number one, your skin starts crawling.
Well, I have to preface this by saying I'm not from Dublin, so I don't guess the Dublin sophisticated humour of Dustin.
Okay.
The joke being that he sings a song deliberately badly, which is just gas to Dublin people. I know all Dublin people have a Dustin Best Of CD at home, the way people have David Gray's White Ladder and the rest of the country.
Yeah, truly.
So Sweet Caroline is my pick as the worst one ever because not only is he doing his thing of singing a song deliberately badly, as if, like, say, you wanted to go to a restaurant and it was the chef who was cooking deliberately bad meals and you go, aha, I went in there and I got botulism, brilliant. So Dustin is the musical equivalent of getting botulism from a restaurant and keep going back. Like, you had 5 or 6 number ones of singing songs deliberately badly, which is gas. But Sweet Caroline is now the official or the unofficial anthem of the England football supporters, which just tells me that his patriotism was always suspect. That his citizenship really, I mean, he made a show of us in Europe as well. So we should have seen this coming when he started singing. Like, I think the B-side of Sweet Caroline was No Surrender to the IRA.
Classic.
Classic. Or God Save the Queen, I think.
Yeah.
One of those. I can't quite remember. But anyway, so I think, he as a stage dub anyway, we can infer from that as a stage dub, his Irishness, his nationality is a bit suspect. And because all Dublin people like Dustin and stage dubs like Mrs. Brown's Boys, how dubs like to represent themselves, that all Dublin people are probably not sound on the national question and their Irishness is suspect, really.
Brilliant. We've alienated all my Dublin listeners, so I appreciate. But do you know what? Maybe for the best. Bye-bye, Dublin. We've had enough of you. Only people from Munster now. Thanks.
But see, they're listening to Dustin anyway, so they only listen to podcasts if their podcast's done badly. And this is a podcast done well.
Oh, that's so kind. Thank you. How many number ones has Dustin had? Do you know off the top of your head?
5.
Fucking hell, that's just not right. Like,
It is not right.
it's not right. Do you know? I'm all for fun. That's simply not. Shouldn't have been allowed.
One of the jaw-dropping things of doing Irish number ones is seeing the injustice of it. Prince never had an Irish number one single, for example. Girls Aloud had one Irish number one single.
Don't talk to me with the Girls Aloud thing, because that melts my brain. Oh, they were kind of robbed in the UK as well, though, honestly.
They were. It was amazing. I think, just to go off the point, yeah, it was, I suppose the overexposure of Saturday Night TV meant that they irked a lot of people, but they're absolute banging
and they were
tunes.
they were obviously still very successful in their own rights,
Of
but
course,
it just
yeah.
became a thing of like, I don't know, it seems like they should have way more number ones and they just don't.
It does. I was surprised by it as well. I just assumed they'd like 6 or 7 absolute bangers going to number one, but it was just the ballad they do at Christmas. That's the one that goes to number one. You know? So.
Just infuriating. We need to stop talking about this because we'll be here all day. It has been a ginormous pleasure, and you are welcome back. And you had a couple of other suggestions, so we will get you back next season for something else. Where can people find out more about you and Irish Number Ones if they want to?
The website is irishnumberones.com and the socials are at Irish Number Ones.
Classic. That's easy to remember. I will leave all of that in the show notes. But for now, Aidan Curran, thank you so much for joining me on Flop Culture. Much appreciated.
Thank you, Fionnuala.